not in the stream. While Alpheus is doing this, a lot of us up here in command will try to answer your questions that may come up.
Lovely. Okay, we're recording now. Somebody asked me to make a recording of this, so good. Right, this is a Thanatos. This is one of 4 different carriers in the game. This is currently the preferred carrier for most of the Imperium stuff. Other carriers are also available. The first thing you're going to notice here is you've got a load of bays. So this is my ship here, same as any other subcap. I'm going to assume you know how to use a subcap. That's kind of the level of assumed knowledge of this little talk. But you'll notice you've got a whole load more bays. It's not just a drone bay and a cargo bay. You've got a whole load of other stuff. The first one, I'm going to start from the bottom here, is the fuel bay. Caps need fuel to jump. Each fuel type is dependent on the race of the carrier or the other capsule that you're using. In this case, Galente use oxygen isotopes, so I've got 93,000 or so oxygen isotopes in there. I had 100,000 earlier. I made a jump. I used 6,000 and some up. So that's kind of roughly how much you use for most of your jumps, between about 5, 10, 15,000, something like that. Next one up is the fleet hangar. This is like a big cargo bay. As you can see, I've got 10,000 cubic meters of space. That's usually full of refits. I don't actually have the refits on here, but if you look at the fits on the forum, there'll be a load of mods you've got to carry with them. You can keep them in your fleet hangar. Again, this is something that all caps will have, so your fax will have it, your dread will have it as well. You can also share it with people in your fleet or in your corporation by clicking either the little star here or the little inverted chevrons here. That allows
the stream has max number of viewers.
Okay, guys, I'm being told that the stream has got maxed out. If you need to be on the stream, do stay on the stream because you just don't know this stuff. That's great. If you know what you're doing with a carrier, I'd ask if you wouldn't mind dropping the stream just so we can get as many people watching as possible.
Alpheus, do you want me to capture this and put it on Twitch or something?
I'm currently recording, so I'll put it on YouTube or something later on.
So
Okay.
Stream it
I was going to say, I'll just put it up.
Watch it on a private.
Say again, sorry?
So I can restream it on YouTube on a private link if you want.
Yeah, if you want to do that, fine. Whatever you think is going to make this work. But I'm going to carry on for now because we haven't got all evening. Fleet hangar, we've covered that, I think. So where was I? You can share that with your fleet members or with your corp members. Allows them to access stuff in space. You should probably keep those off most of the time. Things do get stolen occasionally. Ship maintenance bay, that allows you to carry assembled ships without modules in the cargo. So when we move around, you might have heard people saying, I've got SMA, SMB, you're welcome to give me ships and then I'll move them for you. This is where you put ships. You wouldn't necessarily have it filled like for most combat fleets, but when you're moving around, it's very useful to have. And this next one this is unique to carriers and super carriers. This is your fighter bay. Think of it as being a bit like a big drone bay. I'll talk about what you do with it a bit later on, but you can see I've got some fighters lined up here. And then finally, I do have a small regular cargo hold on this carrier. So usually when you're storing stuff, it'll either be in the cargo hold or the fleet hangar. Right, I'm going to undock now, and I'm going to talk you through the basics of using this thing in space. So the first thing you'll probably notice here is this little interface here. These are my fighter tubes. In fact, this is what you'll have when you first undock in a carrier and you've never used it before. And you can see I can press this little button here right down in the bottom corner. I don't know how that's showing up on the stream, to flip between modules and fighter tubes. But we don't want to do that because I want to see them both at the same time, so we always press that little button there that appears just below, and that allows that to pop out, and then you can drag this around to anywhere you like on the screen. I like having it usually about here. I can press the middle button on this rack of 3 here, and that brings up my fighter bay. I can then load fighters into the tubes like this. So what I've done there is I've just dragged a stack of these Einherji fighters, which are just light fighters, which are good for carriers. I've just dropped one stack into each tube. You see the tubes load one fighter at a time. Different fighters live into different sizes of squadrons. So regular light fighters like these Einherjis, they have squadrons of 9. And so a full stack of like a full carrier wing would be 27. And I'll just take those out. And they'll all unload at the same time. So I'll load some slightly different fighters in now. So I'm loading these ones, which are Equites. They are space superiority fighters. I'll talk about what those are in a sec. And I'm loading this third set here of Sirens, which are fighters that can tackle things. It's worth noting that only carriers at the moment can use those. They used to be possible to use them on supers, but not anymore, unfortunately. Let's just run through quickly what all these fighters are and talk about the differences between them. So we'll just unload them. And I can stack them up like you would do with anything else in your inventory. Light fighters are great against subcaps. They're okay against other capitals. They have a regular attack, they have a micro warp drive, and then they have some missiles which do some extra damage. There's one of these for each type of race. I'm not going to go through them all at the moment, but I've got some Minotaur ones here which are called Energies, and I've got some Amar ones here which are called Templars. I've also got these Space Superiority fighters. They're not very good at shooting players, but they are very good at shooting other fighters. So in a big cap fight, we want to what we call defang opposing, usually super carriers. So we'll use these to hit the enemy's super carriers' stuff to make sure that they are dead in space and they can't do anything to us. Sirens, as I've touched on, are support fighters, so they can tackle. There's only 3 of those in a squadron. Drommies are the same, but with webs. I can only use 1 of those at a time, so I can't use the Sirens and the Drommies at the same time. These are the Lycons here, so I can use 3 squadrons of lights and 1 squadron of supports. The SS and the lights, what we call regular light fighters, both count as lights. So I'll now show you how to move them around. Let's load the energies up again. And once I've done with this, I can just close this. But you can see it's all replicated up here.
Is the YouTube restream happening?
Yeah, if someone can drop from Discord so I can join. It's ready, it's set up already.
Cool. Is there anyone you can just drop who knows what they're doing?
And then you can all watch the same thing on YouTube, don't worry.
Cool, looks like somebody dropped.
I'm not clear how you got the pictures up on your overview.
No, it still says it's full.
Come on guys, 1 or 2 people drop, you'll be able to watch it all on YouTube anyway.
I dropped.
Okay, also you can ask questions in Fleet. He's using Eve Preview just to answer that one. It's a really useful little thing. It doesn't require any input broadcasting like IS Boxer or anything like that.
Oh, is this
It's
the
like
pictures in
Evo
overview?
Preview.
Yeah, so these...
And that's a really clever place to hide them.
Yeah, so this is just me being a bit of a stickler for detail and hiding them nicely within my interface, but you can put them anywhere you like. You can just pick them up and drag them around. So I've just got three accounts on one monitor and another one.
That program is a lifesaver.
It's great, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And it's completely within the EULA. Everybody uses it who multi-boxes at all seriously. So I would recommend that strongly if you do any kind of multi-boxing at all. Good, right, I will continue. These are where my fighters live because I put them there. Press the button at the top and they launch. Now, muy importante, once I've launched these, I am no longer tethered to this citadel. That is extremely important to know. I can recall them with the button at the bottom, or not quite at the bottom, the one up from the bottom, and you'll notice that I'm retethered again. So when you launch your fighters, you untether, and when you take them back in, you retether. Do not find yourself in a situation where you've got you're in a compromising position because you've left your fighters somewhere. So, fighters out. Now, I use the fighters in the same way that I use my ship. You'll notice each of these squadrons has a little blue circle around it here. 1, 2, 3. And that means I'm currently controlling them. The best way to move your fighters is with the Q menu. Now, this is how you should really be moving your ship around most of the time in the game. Of course, most of us just approach or orbit or do whatever we do. But the best way of moving fighters, and probably your ship as well, is with the Q menu. So I'm holding down Q, and I get this nice little disc pop up, and this allows me to give the fighters a move command. So I want to go 30 kilometers over there. I click once. Sorry, this is quite difficult because I'm having to hold down my push to talk as well at the same time. But you'll notice once I've clicked, I need to then pick a direction vertically to go, so I can move it around. But I've set 30 kilometers. And I'll click again, and the fighters will start moving in the direction that I went. Now, suppose I want to move my ship somewhere else. I press down on my capacitor. Now I've selected my ship. You'll see it's also highlighted in space. These things, these UI highlights, they have a tendency of breaking down in tie-dye. So just be aware of what your ship is doing, and it might not be quite what your fighters are doing. And again, I can hold down Q and move my ship over there independently from my fighters.
Just FYI, we can't hit you every time you press Q.
It's okay.
So I'm being told that you can't necessarily hear me when I'm moving things around. Okay, let's try and work that out.
May I butt in here for just a second?
Shoot.
Just wanted to mention, if you're flying a carrier, anytime you do anything like orbit, approach, or Q, you'll be generally controlling your fighters if they're selected. But if you do anything that involves warping or aligning, that will always do what your carrier is going to do.
That's a good point. Yeah, so I can use my overview here to, for example, align to that keep star like so, and that's my my ship doing it. So I'm going to select my fighters again because I want to do something with them. I can click the first one, hold shift, and then click the third one. It'll select them all, which is quite useful. Now I'm just going to, what am I going to do with these? For example, I'm just going to shoot this structure. So I'm going to lock the structure. You'll note here that I have a module on my carrier called a network sensor array. This is a module. You don't have to have one fit, but you almost always do. This is like a massive SIBO on a carrier. Carriers in general take a long time to lock things. Not so much in this case because I'm locking something massive like a Fortizar, but if I'm locking small things like frigates, I might decide to use my NSA. This is a high slot, by the way. I've got it down here in the lows just because that's where my personal preference is of where to put them. But when this thing is on, I lock things a lot faster. What it does do, however, is make me immobile. I can't warp when I'm using this, and it cycles in 1 minute, and it uses a lot of capacitor. So you should always listen to the FC when you're using a carrier as to whether or not your NSA should be cycling green or cycling red. And if in any doubt, set auto repeat off is your friend, because you can always activate it at the drop of a hat if it's gone red when you need it. But what you don't want is to be in a situation where you can't warp off for a minute, which might be 10 minutes in tie-dye, because you have left it on. And again, I have some other modules here. These are omnidirectional tracking links, which you might use on your Myrmidon if you're into that sort of thing, which just make my fighters shoot things better. So now I'm going to give them an instruction to shoot this citadel for fun. You can do this with F1 to 3, but I'm just going to use the button so you can see what I'm doing. That's the standard attack, and you'll note that they immediately go into, I'll zoom out a bit so you can see, they immediately go into a default orbit. I can change that, but it's usually okay, unless I'm fighting structures with PDS rigs. We might need to orbit a bit further out. But I can still give them orders again. So you'll see I can move them there and they'll continue shooting. If I want to move them there faster, they have MWDs. They're not like ship MWDs. They don't use cap. They just work for a bit and then cool down. And then they'll go over there.
And you guys can see that fighters move a heck of a lot faster than your ship does with an MWD.
They certainly
This
do.
is one of the balance things that they have. So you'll watch his MWD is going to cycle off, and then it's got a gray timer. Kind of like your cloak would if you turned your cloak off, and that's telling you how long it is until you can turn it back on.
Yep. So that's, now you see they're moving a lot slower with the MWs back off again. The third ability that they've got is this rocket salvo, which is just it's a 12-shot DPS like buff. Effectively, it just shoots some rockets. So I'll just do that, and hey, guess what? I just did a load more damage. Great. So now I'm going to recall again. So I press this button here. You see I have it mapped to G, but I don't think that's a standard. I don't think that is a standard command. But that button will always recall your fighters, and you'll notice that these micro warp drives will have cooled down.
Default recall would be the same, whatever button you use for your
For your
drones on
drones,
Myrmidon
exactly
or
right.
whatever.
Shift R generally.
So you'll see that they're in, and it'll say refueling. What that really means is rearming. So the more rocket salvos you've used, the longer this will take to rearm. The more damaged your fighters are, the longer they'll take to refuel, rearm. But once they're ready to go, you'll see it'll say ready. Now what I'm going to do is very briefly show you what the equites do. So we'll load those up, and I'll put the siren out for good measure as well.
So the thing to note here was you watched this light fighter shooting the structure. They were doing about 1,300 damage a shot. And now he's probably going to lock and shoot the structure again with the same fighters. And you're going to notice there's a drastic damage difference on these.
Yeah. So I've got the siren's not going to do anything with them for a minute. But I move these exactly the same way. They're doing less damage. These are not designed to shoot structures. They're designed to shoot other fighters. They can shoot anything though, but they're just much better against fighters. You'll see there's some different abilities here. This one's called Evasive Maneuvers, and bizarrely it has a little picture of a shield next to it. It's actually an afterburner. It just makes you go a bit faster, and apparently makes you a little bit harder to hit. But you can use that whenever you need to.
One thing to note about space superiority fighters is that they apply damage extremely well to frigates, like arguably a lot better than regular fighters.
Oh yeah, they're pretty effective against frigates. But what you can't do with them against frigates is use this ability at the top here, which is Tackle, which, amongst other things, it's effectively a scram and a web, which you use only against other fighters. We're getting into a little bit kind of advanced stuff here, but this is always good to know, especially if you're the kind of guy who's just got a carrier and it's your first cap, and you find yourself in a big tie-dye fest, and you're wondering what you can do with it. And the great thing to do is take out other fighters from hostile super carriers, and you can stop them from escaping using these abilities here. The sirens have only 2 buttons. You see I've got a warp disruptor, which unfortunately works on they're quite slow because they used to have micro warp drives and then they took them away because CCP hate goons. But there you go. Tackle, which tackles whatever it's pointing, or tackles whatever it's shooting at. And then Afterburner, which just makes it go a bit faster. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because we've still got other caps to get through, and then we're going to have the fun that everyone's really here for at the end. Cool. Stock up the carrier. Oh, aggression timer. Well, we can stay there then. Right, I switched to a Dreadnought. This is on a different character. So this one works in kind of much the same way. Again, I've got all the bays we talked about earlier. Ship maintenance bay, fleet hangar, fuel. The one thing that Dreadnoughts do, just functionally, that you need to be aware of is that they consume strontium, which is here. And the reason they consume strontium is because they have this module here called a siege module. They have big capital guns on them. And the way this one's fit at the moment is also got a cap newt, and it's got this thing here, which I'll explain in a second. So I'm going to lock this structure up again. I'm going to stop my ship. And I'm going to start using these guns. So these are auto cannons. You can get longer range guns as well. Read the post, it'll tell you the difference between them. I don't have time to go into every ammo type and gun type now, but T2 guns tend to be preferred. Oh, I've unstacked them like an idiot. Let's restack them. There we go. Okay, you see now I'm shooting this structure and I'm doing some damage. Like, it's quite a lot, really. It's kind of more than the carrier, but it's not a huge amount. And I mouse over and I'm doing 1400 DPS, which is, pretty good. Not that great. Then I activate the siege module, and you'll see I'll start doing quite a bit more. I don't know if you can read the numbers there. That's more than 10 times the damage as I was doing before. What the siege module does is it renders my ship immobile. I can't move now. I'm stuck for the next 5 minutes. I also can't be repaired, so nobody can send me cap, nobody can send me a remote shield, but they do a heck of a lot more damage. And these are extremely effective against other capital ships. They just got a huge buff in terms of the damage that they can do because all T2 short-range ammo types were buffed across the range, which is why we really like T2 gun dreads. Particularly Revelations, this one Naglfar is also pretty good. And there's not a huge amount else to say about Dreadnoughts. They are just big guns, and they're a lot of fun to fly. We usually fit a capital newt as well. I don't think I can't newt a structure. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Maybe I newt my own Thanatos.
For those of you who are looking at the Dread Compendium and looking at fits for dreads, there are some dread fits called generally home defense dreads. They look kind of more expensive. They tend to have local tank on them.
Yep.
One thing about the siege module is the local tank on your dread goes up by about the same amount as the damage goes up on your dread. So you tank for a lot as long as you have capacitor.
So you see here, I've switched back to the carrier, and this is what a Dreadnought will do, even just one Dreadnought, and not even at optimal range for that matter. It's doing quite a lot of hurt in quite a short space of time, and this is an armor tanked carrier, and it's already at 85% armor. So they are not to be messed with, and 3 or 4 of these will take down a carrier very quickly. 30 or 40 will take down a Titan very quickly. So if you are wondering which cap to go for, well, I'm not sure if we want carriers or dreads. I suppose we want both, don't we? That's probably the answer to that one. So get both.
I think in general it's probably dreads better than carriers, but like if you can do carrier well and dread not,
Why not both?
Tech 1 dread is not that great. But yeah, both, always both.
Cool. Right, I'm going to talk very briefly about this special module that I have here on the Dreadnought, and then we'll talk about faxes, and then we'll throw it open to questions. This is a capital hull energizer. We don't use this on every one of our Dreadfits anymore. They took a bit of a nerf a while ago. This is effectively like, I'm going to assume most of you have flown Harpies or maybe Munins before. This is basically like the ADC. It gives you a big resist buff, but it only gives you a big resist buff in your hull. So you don't activate this when you first start getting shot. You activate this just as you go into hull, and it'll give you another, I think, about 12 seconds. It used to be 12 seconds of virtual invulnerability, and now it's 12 seconds of just, you're probably going to live a bit longer unless they DD you. But it can be quite good to prolong the lifespan of your Dreadnought in a big old tie-dye fight. I'll just do it once. You see, there we go. Oh, it has a nice effect. I never play with the effects on, so I've never seen this before. That's pretty.
And
anime,
one thing
isn't
you
it?
guys, one thing you guys can clearly see, he activated it. That module is now completely red. So
Yeah.
when this cycle finishes, it's burned out.
Yeah, so it's not like your ADC that you can use it once every few minutes. That is now gone. I have to dock up and repair it. It is a one-use thing. And like an ADC, it replaces a regular damage control, so I can either have this or a regular damage control. Can I dock? External factors, yeah, because I'm still in siege. Okay, right, now let's do the facts quickly, and then we'll go to something a bit more exciting for everybody. Just bear with me a second. Cool, okay, I've had to temporarily move that onto this monitor. This is a fax machine. This one's a Minakawa. It is a Caldari one. All you need to know is that it reps shield. That's basically all you need to know. It is very useful in shield fleets. I'm not sure if we've still got a cast iron rule that you must have one of these if you bring a shield super, but you really should. What these do are they're like big logistics. They kind of work a bit like Dreadnoughts in that they have this module down here which kind of looks like the siege module on the Dreadnought, but this is the triage module. When I switch this on, I just rep things more effectively. Same rules apply as with the Dread. I'm a mobile. I can't receive external reps myself. These ships are, you need them to take big capital fleets anyway, really, especially super fleets, because subcap logi, for obvious reasons, is just not going to cut it against the amount of damage that comes in from, well, these guys mainly. I don't know if you can see that. I'm talking about Dreadnoughts. So okay, let's do this really quickly. There, I put that into triage, and now I can lock things very quickly. I can't repair him because I think he's still in siege. There you go. That's what happens when you try and repair something that's in siege. But otherwise, it functions similarly to other
Can rep
caps.
the carrier.
Yeah, the carrier's docked, unfortunately. Could do, yeah, could do. Never mind. It has, again, fuel and stront. The stront is consumed by the triage module. It has the same bay here. You see I've got some refits on this one. Oh, I've got a ship in that one. Nice. And you have some drones. You can use drones in these as well. I don't think you can use them when you're in triage, but they're quite useful out of triage.
You can use rep drones while in triage. You can't use any damage drones. Damage drones
is
have
that
their
the
damage
case?
reduced by 100% by your triage
100%.
module.
That sounds about right, doesn't it? Good. Okay. Shall we go on to the Q&A and then we can start shooting each other? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. So when you want, when do you want to use a boson versus a lance?
Yeah. So let's do bosons actually and lances. That's probably quite a good idea.
The answer to those questions are quite simple. You only use them if you are individually directed to by the Super FC.
Yes, that's true. That's a very good point. I mean, when you're told to is the answer, but I'm sure we can give you something a little bit more satisfying than that. Okay, bear with me a second. I'll set something up because I know we wanted to show you guys how to aim a lance. So let's get this undocked.
One thing I will say about bosons and lances, bosons especially, that's going to be if you individually are getting dread bombed, like we had this happen on the move op, the two or three idiots who got dread bombed, if they had actually used their bosons like instructed to by the FC, they would have lived. So
yeah, it's good to know how to do.
Skill.
It's very good to know how to do.
Show DD how to, please. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that. That's a really good idea.
At some point, can you talk about the use of long-range fighters for us that's going from a carrier to a super carrier?
Yeah, can do. Okay, let's do the boson, and then I will show you a super quickly.
Local, I'm kind of useless for this, I'm afraid, because my internet is too shit to stream.
Local, no worries, don't worry about it.
Buff relates specifically to the guns or to the siege?
I'm afraid I missed
want me
that.
to
I missed the start of that one. Do you want to...
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the recent buff to dreads, is that for the Tech 2 guns or for the siege?
So it's to the Tech 2 ammo in particular. So
it is to Tech 2 close range ammo. So if you're a laser pilot, your conflag. If you're an autocannon pilot, your hail. All rage torpedoes and rockets and things of that nature. And what was the last one?
Okay.
Void, that doesn't count because more.
No. It would be Javelin. Javelin got the buff. Or no, it was Void. It's close range, close gun ammo. So yeah, Void got a big buff.
Yeah, which doesn't
The
count.
basic gist of it is you want T2 guns on your dread, if possible.
Okay.
If you have the skills, you should always have T2 guns on your dread.
Cool. And with Straunt, does it need to be in a specific bay?
It can be in your cargo, or it can be in your fuel bay. It cannot be in your fleet hangar.
Okay.
But you can
You
drag
can
it
keep
around,
some in the
obviously.
fleet hangar
You can keep
and
some and
drag
drag
it
it in
around,
there,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So in your capital compendium, you'll see that you have fits, and you have generally you're indicated to carry a certain amount of fuel, and then you're indicated somewhere else to carry a backup supply of fuel for a small amount. Or you'll see, like, especially on dreadnoughts, you're supposed to carry like 1,500 in your fuel bay and an extra 600 in your fleet hangar. Mid-combat, with combat going on, with your, and I'm trying to think of what it's called here, with your combat timer, your aggression timer, you can still drag items around in your cargo as a dreadnought.
Let's talk about, just quickly, and whilst I've got this character on this monitor, I'm going to show you how to lance. This is a Titan, as you may have seen one before. This is lance. You aim it like this. So it's kind of like the Q menu we were talking about earlier. You set a direction in the lateral plane, and then you move it in the vertical plane. So I'm going to try and lance something here. I find it useful, and you don't have to do this, but this is personally what works for me. I shift my camera to the thing I want to shoot, so I'm going to shoot this dread. And you do that by holding down Alt and then clicking on the thing, or you can right-click and say, look at this ship, or look at this whatever. And you'll notice that because I have the tactical overlay up, which, like, you should just all the time, it's great, this object has cast a line down to the plane on which my ship is on. And what I do is I line up the central dark red line in the middle of this. So this light kind of corona surrounding the line in the middle. This is the area of effect of the weapon. The line in the middle is the aim point. So I want to line up the aim point exactly with the little blob that indicates where the dreadnought is in relation to me on the horizontal plane. I then click and I move it vertically. Oh, someone else is having a go as well. I think we're going to kill this one. And I click again, and you'll notice this is a spool up animation. And that dread's going to eat shit pretty rapidly. And that is how you lance.
Yes, burst projectors work the same.
And it should also be mentioned, in tie-dye, don't move anything until you actually see your lance go off. Because even though you might click a second time, if you move your camera or something like that, sometimes it'll send your lance off into Narnia and you'll look like the idiot spy.
Happens to the best of us on occasions. Don't worry if it happens first time. But that moving the camera trick I find to be pretty useful. So I would recommend doing that your first time. So if I wanted to shoot at the minnow, I would... won't let me line it up, oh well. But the general principle is, look for the point here, click, drag up or down accordingly, and click again, and then you'll watch the spool up animation, and then it'll fire. The boson's exactly the same, it just has a shorter range, so it's rendered on the screen like a cone, I believe the damage is actually just a fat cylinder, but it only goes 30 kilometers instead of 200 kilometers like the Lance. And as somebody mentioned earlier, it's kind of like aiming a burst projector. It's actually easier than aiming a burst projector, because with a burst projector you need to set the absolute location of where the burst is going to, whereas this you're just setting the vector of the weapon. So I think it's easier than firing a burst projector capably.
So
the burst projectors.
So the difference here between burst projectors and lances is the lance had a giant red line. A burst projector is just going to have like a little red bubble as you're moving it around that grid, and that little red bubble is kind of where you want to put it. But you have to remember, with a burst projector, especially against things like hack fleets and destroyers and whatever you're trying to aim at, if they're moving, you have to adjust as a pilot for where they may end up.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's can be true with a lance as well. It depends entirely on what you're lancing.
Alpheus's look at trick is going to be extremely helpful if you're using a bubble projector, because the red bubble is disconnected from your ship. You won't see, maybe you're aiming it behind or in front of the enemy fleet, but if you're looking at a dude in the fleet and you see he's in the red bubble, you know that you're putting your bubble where it needs to be.
That's a good point. Right, we're going to do supers quickly, because somebody mentioned supers. Ignore the fact that I've just self-destructed a Nirvana pod. This is CC, so everything's cheap. So this is back in my carrier character, and I'm now going to... Do I need to cycle the Sino again? No. Oh, for the absolute beginners, by the way, if you've literally never done anything with a cap before, obviously you should probably touch on the really fundamental stuff here. The way you jump is you right-click on your capacitor, and then click the name of the person to jump to.
His sentence didn't finish there. He said right-click on the capacitor and then select jump to.
Did I get cut off? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
The other way of doing that is if you know who the Sino is, quite often you'll have a Sino character doing this. So like the Sino character will drop a bunch of C's in fleet, and then you can just right-click the person's name. And then from fleet menu you can click jump to. That's sometimes more secure, because sometimes you'll have Sinos in fleets where they're not supposed to be. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so one of the big things John will have a tendency to tell you to do, and Jay, will be, there's a character in the watch in the MOTD, add them to your watch list, right-click on them from your watch list, there's a big red button that says jump to character.
Cool.
Playground brings up a good point here. Never talk about jumping unless you're told to, and only ever jump to the person that you're told to jump. Whenever you're told to jump in a camp fleet or a super fleet, the FC will always tell you the name of the person that you're jumping. Only ever jump to that person.
Yeah, don't jump until you're told is the general rule there. Okay,
Yeah,
let's talk
there's,
about... Go on, sorry.
Yeah, that actually happened in one of our big super fights. The enemy burned a spy to Papa Sino and screamed on comms, jump to Sino name, blah, 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 blah. And it was just some random dude. And I think a couple of idiots jumped and then died horribly on one of the bad guy keep stars that we blew up a few years ago. So like, that's not just like, hey, wait until you do what you're told. Make sure you're listening to an actual FC, because that's a pretty common metagame trick.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys are old school and remember the Slayer from back in the day, he was unfortunately.
Oh, that's right. It was Slayer.
He was one of the Slayer.
I love the Slayer.
Quick note also, if you're in the no chatter channel, you will only hear commands from the FC, FYI.
That is a good point, yeah. Right, let's do super fighters, and then we'll have a big old punch up. So, you'll notice this is a super carrier. This is a Minmatar one, it doesn't really matter. They're all kind of the same. I have the same fighter interface I had here, as I did with the carrier, but I've got more tubes. So I load up my fighter bay, and I've got slightly different types of fighters. How to do this best? Let's unload a few. So you'll notice I still have energies here. Again, these are light fighters. I can carry up to 3 squadrons of those at a time. And so when I'm carrying 3 of those, it means I can have 2 squadrons of something else, and we'll talk about what those things are in a sec. Something else means heavy fighters, and I can carry up to 4 of those, so I can have 4 and 1, or I can have 3 lights and 2 heavies, or I can have 3 heavies and 2 lights, and so on and so forth. The difference between the heavy fighters is probably more important than it is than between the light fighters. And that's because the heavy fighters are where the damage is really at in a supercarrier. So I'm going to drag these in. These are called Malleuses. Again, doesn't matter, they're MR because you can tell because they are yellow on the background. These are, and you can right click on them and it'll tell you, heavy attack. Heavy attack means they're the ones that do all the damage. They kind of work like the lights. I'm going to launch them and you'll see why. They've got a gun here, a regular gun. They have a micro warp drive like the lights, although they're not as fast. And they have a torpedo salvo, which torpedo salvo kind of sounds like heavy rocket salvo, right? Well, yes, it does. Except it'll, it's like being kicked by a mule. So a volley from 4 of these will probably two-shot a dreadnought. Like, you can take out a dread in no more than 3 volleys, certainly, if you've got all the DDAs online. They kick a lot of shit. They are also very vulnerable, as we discussed earlier, to the space superiority fighters. So you've got to manage those.
For reference, for those of you people who are wondering what he means, the little light fighter with the rocket salvo, the heavy rocket salvo, did about 3,000 damage to the structure when he was shooting at it. We all kind of remember looking at that a couple of minutes ago. It did like 2,300 or 3,100 or something like that.
Well, let's have a look.
Supers are going to use their torpedo salvo, and you're going to see some triple-digit holy moly numbers pop up.
Depending
Sorry,
on the list, it's going to be 100 to 300,000 damage.
So I've turned on all of the... I've just moved the camera over to look at the minnow here. And I'm turning my hardeners on because someone's shooting me, but I've turned all the hardeners on the minnow as well. And I'm going to tell them to start attacking. So yeah, it's doing some damage, that's great. And I'm going to fire a salvo, and it's quite a big chunk that's just come off. And that's a minnow, and minnows are a lot tankier than dreadnoughts. So you can see that I don't have to do this too many times and this thing is going to die. This is why having space superiority fighters on our carriers is hugely important, because we want to take things like Malleuses out of the picture as quickly as possible. They are absolutely lethal. I'll fire off one more salvo, and then we will talk about the other type of heavy fighters.
We're gonna talk about burst protectors too.
There we go. Lovely, and then I can recall same as before. So let's pull everything back in.
And a lot of people ask this. Alpheus, real quick, I'm going to ask you to pull up your fitting page. People always wonder what we say when we mean that supers are now the damage king. If you would take a quick second and look at that DPS number on the right-hand side, Alpheus is going to point it out here. 24,000 damage per second. Super carriers are not to be messed with in large numbers.
Yeah.
Hey, I also want to get in here. If you've come back to the game, super carriers are way cheaper for us, I guess. I guess for everybody, but certainly in Delve, they're a lot cheaper than they were before. They're a lot easier for us to reimburse, and I do encourage... I encourage a lot of aggression, and I think that we're going to have a lot more opportunities. We have been bullying the bad guys with super carriers, and the more people that we can teach how to use them effectively, the more bullying we can do. Because, you know what, if they blew up 10 of our super carriers, it's like, what, maybe 200 billion, 250 billion ISK, like whatever. It's like pocket change for the Alliance in the year of our Lord 2020. So super carriers, in some of these big super cap fights that we've had in the last like 5 years or so, I forget which one it was because they all blur together in my mind, but we have used them as like super heavy tackle, just drop them right on the bad guys' faces. They're it's a lot easier to use and abuse them, and who gives a shit if you lose them.
Out of curiosity, I know we've talked about SRP a little bit. What does the SRP for like carriers, dreads, and supers look like?
I mean, it's handled just like anything else, I think. But I'm not qualified to answer that question. Let's.
There's a whole separate team for that.
If you check the
let's not worry about
SRP
it right
app,
now.
you will actually see the payouts for SRP on regular capitals, and for super capitals, generally we pay out the form of one whole, and then money to buy the modules for your fit.
Yeah, I think it's done like case by case depending on the fight and what's the the damage done and what the overall liability is. But I'm not really qualified to talk about that, to be honest. It gets handled. Like nobody gets left without a chip or without some money.
You won't be losing money, basically.
Yeah, I do know that the guy who asked was in TNT, so he's really asking the wrong people.
Well, it's sort of the same setup, right? Like usually we're all we all are on the whatever. Let's just get back to the. You don't have to worry. Like there's never been a fight where we've lost a bunch of Titans where people did not get all their shit back. So
yeah,
including the one guy with a Moloch.
Yep.
So I was going to talk about the LRs. Embarrassingly, I actually haven't updated my fighters on this since I did it on TQ the other day, but I haven't done it on this one. So I don't actually have any LRs in this super carrier.
Jump you out some?
No, actually I have another super. Let's just do that. That's going to be easier, isn't it?
Can you briefly talk about safe travel for carriers and dreads between staging systems?
Join move ops. Join move ops and jump to Sinos when you're told by SCs. That's the safest way to move.
No, I mean it's been like 4 years since I played.
Okay.
It was before tethering, so
Ah, I see. Okay, right. So yeah, let's talk about that. I was talking about tethering, assuming everybody knew what that was. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see here, if you're still looking at the stream, I've got this like kind of blue kind of energy line that's connecting me and this structure. Any upwell structures, which are the citadels, the mining engine, like the engineering platforms, the mining platforms, so on and so forth, they all have this tether mechanic. Obviously, I can't dock in all of them as a capital. Capitals can dock in most of the bigger ones. Supers can only dock in keep stars. Keep stars are the huge. If you're an MO, you can see the thing you've undocked from is this huge twin arch structure. That's the only thing a super can dock in. But you can still tether up to just about anything. And the way you can tell if a structure is friendly is that it appears on the overview, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's friendly because hostile ones that are on grid with you will also appear on the overview. The absolute best way is just use your right-click menu, and you'll see those are the structures that I have the right to go and tether on. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they're friendly either. The concept of a bait citadel does exist, so use your head when you're warping to things blind. Obviously a good structure is generally going to be better than anything else, and people can and will drop bubbles to drag or stop you short or drag you past the structure, so do be aware. And the safest way of making sure you don't become a statistic is to join move ops and only jump when an FC tells you. And when you do jump and it's onto a structure, you tether up within 30 seconds typically. So there's a tether block when you first jump in.
You have to note that for that tether block timer to start, you need to move your ship and stop your ship.
Yes, that's true. Okay.
So on jump in, move ship, stop ship immediately.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in one more super and you will see what I mean. I'll have to move that onto the screen as well, bear with me. Right, here we go. So, jumping. And you will note that I have this location change timer up here. Now, whilst this is ticking down, I believe I'm invulnerable. I can't be locked. Nothing can really affect me. And the way I break that is by just double-clicking in space. Once I double-click in space, I'm now lockable. The enemy can shoot me. But you see this timer here, this tether block is starting to count down. This was... there was a suggestion that it was too safe to jump between citadel to citadel to citadel, and the way that they were going to combat it was by introducing a 30-second block timer. In practice, 30 seconds isn't really long enough to catch anyone, even if you are really on the ball and you see a jump freighter, jumping into a structure we can't dock in. 30 seconds really isn't long enough, but it is there and you need to be aware of it. So you see now that's expired, and my tether ribbon appears again.
Last night.
Yeah, for those of you who saw the battle reports this morning of that dead Titan, he was caught in those 30 seconds after jumping in.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, well,
yes, he was.
For most people, 30 seconds is quite a short time to do anything. But hey, here we go. Right, where was I? It's also worth mentioning when we're talking about tethering that usually my tether is blue, but you'll see a few of these ships here have got orange tethers. That just indicates that they are approaching the maximum range. And the way you can tell visually what the maximum range is by looking at this like docking perimeter here, this sort of circle of lights, and you imagine a sphere that connects these two at the top with this ring around the middle. That's your tether limit. And if you go beyond that, you'll get a red tether, which is still on tether. You still can't be targeted. But if you break that this will disappear, and then you will be susceptible to being made to have a bad time. So let's talk about LR fighters. I think I have some in this one. At least I hope so. Gonna drag those out. Pretty sure termites are LRs.
Someone is hotkeying up.
Yeah.
Played Rabbit. Thank you.
It's a name I haven't heard in a while. Okay, so I'm going to launch just these 3. So LRs are, they're a type of heavy fighter that are good at engaging subcaps, good being a relative term. They're kind of like battleship guns in that tracking is an issue if you're shooting something small, so it's not like a light where you just they chase after the target and start shooting it like it's a nimble frigate. These guys, you need to think about transversal, you need to think about getting a subcap fleet to get webs on, so on and so forth. They, again, have 3 abilities, much like many of these fighters do. The standard one is their attack, so I'll lock something up and start telling it to attack. Let's go for the minnow again. He's not had a good day, has he?
So you guys remember how much damage the other fighters did to the minnow? These are going to do considerably less.
So they're doing some damage. They're not really at their optimal. That's 60k. What is their optimal, actually? Let's mouse over. So they're sort of 45 to 57. Yeah, okay. So they'll move in a little bit closer. You see they've been given a default orbit. Again, I can give them a different instruction if I want to. But yeah, they're doing some damage. If that was a subcap, it would probably be doing more appreciable damage. If that was a frigate, I probably wouldn't really be hitting it at all. Battleships, great. They apply very well against battleships. The second ability...
Battle cruiser is also good.
Yeah, battle cruisers. Anything with a big SIG. It's all about the SIG radius. The second ability they've got here is they have a little MJD on board, so they don't have an afterburner or a micro-warp drive. And the way that works is kind of like this. I'll spool it up. I get this graphic again. This looks familiar. And it emanates from my ship, but what you need to realize is it's actually from the location of the fighter. It's going to be jumping in that direction. I'm specifying a location that I want it to jump towards, and it'll jump there. So let's say this direction. And again, up a bit, and then it'll spool like an MJD does on a battleship or a battle cruiser. Let's take a look at him. I don't have fighter models on, you can't see him. But you'll notice he'll just hop 100 kilometers in that direction, which is a kind of cool ability. Can be quite useful when we're chasing down subcap fleets and they're trying to run away and we're trying to get fighters on top of them. It's good for ratting as well, if you're into that sort of thing. Not that we've been able to do that for a while. The third ability that they have is a little bomb launcher. This is semi-useful in PvP. Like, I've never seen any real clutch bombing runs pulled off by supers.
They're more clutch for they give a super the ability to bomb themselves and blow bubbles off.
Yeah, that's true. They're good at blowing up bubbles, yeah. So they, again, I'm going to look at the minnow. And I'll pick just one of the squads. And this can be a bit trickier because obviously I no longer have the benefit of the aim point from my ship because I'm not shooting from my ship. But again, I'd specify direction. So that's probably going to be horrendously off. And it'll start pointing in that direction. I'm not specifying a bomb location to explode. It flies, I think, 20 or 30k. I can't remember. It might be 30k like a standard bomb. Like it does from a normal bomber. Doesn't do as much damage as a standard bomb. It's got a micro bomb. So there we go. That wasn't too bad. I did some damage there. Again, ratters love this one. Neat trick, but it's semi-useful in PvP. And don't be doing it in the middle of a fleet because you think you've got a good angle because you'll probably just kill the saber who's trying to tackle the baddies for you. There's
or
situational.
A pile of fighters.
Or somebody's fighters or shit like that. It's like running your smart bomb in a fleet. It's kind of antisocial. Now do I have... Yeah, I can probably do a burst projector and then I think we're probably wrapping up. Let's put you back over there. I don't have a burst projector on this one either. Okay, I guess we do a burst projector another time then. Never mind. Unless I've got one in cargo. Yeah. Cool. Okay, a burst projector is something that only gets fit on super carriers. Carriers don't use them, Titans don't use them. And what they do is they project some kind of effect to a point on the grid within, I think, about 200, 250k, something like that. We'll find out in a second.
That one actually depends on the burst projector.
Does it? Well, there you go.
All the burst projectors have some strange ranges on them.
Yeah. So the one that you'll probably use the most is the warp disruption burst projector. It's kind of like a mini saber bubble, but you can just make it appear in space somewhere away. So if you can imagine jumping on top of an enemy subcat fleet and they start trying to run away, you want to get your supers to drop these bubbles in front of them. It sometimes works in practice. You get ones that web, you get ones that give everything there a bigger sig. You know, they're kind of less useful.
Painter ones, yeah.
Yeah, the target paint ones. Yeah, you can use those too. But I'm going to show you how this one works. And I get it, you know, again, there's the little targeting disc, although it's red this time. And let's say I want a bubble. I'll throw a bubble on the minnow. Let's do that. So I kind of line it up the same way as I did with the lance earlier. Double click. And it sits there as this kind of like beacon. It doesn't just deploy immediately. And hey presto, you've got a small bubble. They're pretty fun. Getting used to using those and using them well is a good skill because it stops those pesky Munin fleets from escaping. Right, I think that was everything I really wanted to cover. Does anyone have any more questions, or do you want to just start shooting each other now?
Why does
what breaks tether?
What breaks tether? Well, as discussed, if you drop fighters, that breaks tether. If you lock anything, that breaks tether. If you activate a siege module, that breaks tether. If you light a Sino, that breaks tether. Can anyone think of anything else I've missed?
NSA
breaks tether, yeah. Triage, yeah.
If while you're untethered you get tackled, and it's more than the warp strength of your ship, you can't retether.
Yep, that can happen.
Launching fighters.
Yep, launching fighters.
If you get bubbled, you can't tether.
What happens if you dock up with your fighters out? Can you even do that?
If you can dock with your fighters out, as long as you don't also have an aggression timer. Yeah, what happens is your fighters are now lost. You'd have to like slow boat over them to pick them up. It's frustrating.
Or if you forgot to pick them up after you were, say, ratting with them, you'd have to probe them out.
Yeah, that's fun. Done that before.
And then go and get them in a hauler.
More than one goon has made a small fortune picking up people's lost fighters.
Yeah.
Something else that's worth mentioning here is that if you get tackled by a heavy interdictor, you also can't dock.
Yep. I think that's also the case.
Can you talk a little bit about Titan burst projectors and...
So Titans don't have burst projectors. Titans have... You're talking about a phenomenon generator?
The phenomenon, yeah, phenomenon.
Yeah, okay, let's get one of those. Somebody... I can't do that, can I? How do I do that?
Somebody's got one running on our big old super blob.
How?
Basically, each race of Titans has their own phenom generator. They all have different effects. Some of them will give you, for example, more EM resist and a lower SIG. Some of them will give you, more explosive resist and lower kinetic resist, stuff like that.
They'll have their own effects.
You can heavily advantage your fleet comp sometimes. If you phenom, for example, say you're running Baltex, and you want to buff your own fleet's resistance in your worst resist type, and you can also debuff the enemy fleet's resistance, because phenom generators work on everything that's on grid, including enemies. It doesn't have to be in your fleet.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, for
don't
example,
worry
give enemies
about
a higher sig radius.
Don't worry about making the decision yourself. You'll always be told if you need to phenom, and it's not a skill that's required for flying a Titan either. So I'm going to jump in a ship with a phenom, and you'll see what I mean.
I will tell you all, though, that it is the one skill that you need to have a brain and not think for yourself to have. If you do it on your own because you think you're going to be cool and hit the button, there's somebody in this fleet who's going to yell at you.
Yeah.
Unless they call for phenoms, don't hit them.
You can literally kill an entire fleet just by phenoming if you phenom with the wrong phenom at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So never do it unless you're called to do it.
Should we get everybody to sort of see the effects themselves? Why don't we all hit the Sino? If you're in fleet, there's a Sino up under Alphys Toga in 15W. You can just go ahead and jump there.
And tie-dye.
That's every ship, or?
Yep, everything that can jump.
Well, I need to go get Topes.
You can get them basically for free in that Keepstar.
Yeah.
And then once you're in, go ahead and lock something, lock the structure, because then it'll break your tether.
How do you stop when you get the bombing? Are you just fucked?
When you say the bumping,
So
if
you
can
bumped, you want to turn your prop mod on if you have one. That will slow you down.
And just try and align back to the group. If you bump far enough, you can obviously walk back to us. So Seth in the avatar looks like you've almost bumped far enough to walk back to the blob.
You can, warp back to guys that are bumped on the other end. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can warp to somebody at 50 and then you land on top of us. Okay, right. I hope everybody's got something locked up. First of all, so super fleets, just cat fleets in general, we use boosts the same way as we use in regular fleets. For the guys who've come back and haven't played in 3 or 4 years or more, you've probably worked out by now that we don't have off-grid boosts anymore. Boosts work by being on-grid. See, somebody's just thrown some boosts up there, so you'll see that you've got some shield boosts, you've got some armor boosts. I'm going to turn on some more shield boosts. Great, that gives us some more EHP, and that only applies to our fleet. But you just need to be on grid with the ship when that cycles its boost module. The Phenom generator kind of works like a boost, albeit as Pacify touched on, it applies to everyone on the grid, friend or foe. So you need to think of it, and then in each effect that it does has a sort of it's a double-edged sword. It'll give you a buff to this and a debuff to that. I'm about to fire a Caldari one at the moment, which is on my Titan, which is on my Leviathan, which is a Caldari Titan. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a big shield buff. So watch your shields. If you mouse over your targeting rows or whatever you call this down at the
Pull
bottom
up your
here.
fitting window so they can see your EHP go up.
Yep. And I'm going to hit that. And you'll notice we get a new effect applied, so we get a 30% shield HP bonus, which just goes on top of the boost we've already had. And now on a Titan in particular, I've got rather a lot of shield HP, but that applies to everyone who's here, friend or foe, so always use with caution. It also uses an awful lot of fuel to cycle this thing. It's like firing a Doomsday.
Yes, you can jump with a weapons timer.
That was basically all I wanted to cover. I mean, were there any other questions before we inevitably start wailing on each other? Shoot.
When we jump to a Sino, I see people say don't jump to the Sino to the structure, but jump to your own or to the fleet one we always have up.
Are you talking about when you're moving yourself around in Delve?
Yeah, when you're solo moving yourself, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a couple of people who, off their own backs, just run these safe Sino fleets. They are heroes, basically, because nobody's paying them to do that. It's a great service because you can
Tip
obviously,
them, please.
Yeah, tip
when
them.
you use them.
Because they're not getting paid for their services, so to drop them a few risk when you use them. But you just join a fleet, it'll say Safe Sino. If you've never used it before, once you've used them a few times, you recognise the names. Like, scout it. Don't feel like you have to just trust them implicitly. Scout it. Just like have a little ult there, or see what's going on. Make sure he is where he says he is on the Keepstar, and then jump to it. And it's simple as that. And usually it'll say in the fleet title, the fleet name, where he is. 1DQ is usually a very popular one. Our deployment locations, as sporadically ones up there in other places. They're hugely useful. Yeah, just give them a few ISK whenever you use them, because they can really use it. Was that basically the question you had?
Hey, FC.
Yep.
Could I have some help getting the tick off me in MOTAC or MTECO?
What's going on in MOTAC?
I'm pointed by a hick.
Oh,
They're about to drop
on the test server.
We're all in 15.
Yeah, there's a group who try and fuck with our ops once.
One hick.
Yeah.
Just kill it.
Just W up in you can't kill it with Titan. W up within fleet now while I'll get you there. I'll get just align to the Keepstar.
Can you tell more about this blue cycle around the capacitor and fighters while flying carrier or super carrier?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Okay, so this again is. Why am I looking at Minokawa? No, I'm looking at a carrier. Okay, super carrier, blue circle here. This you only see this on carriers and supers. It just indicates that this is what I have selected. If I launch some fighters, now you can see I have both the carrier and the fighter selected. So if I issue a move command, both my carrier and my fighters will go somewhere. And bear in mind that, as I touched on earlier, these things do bug, so verify by clicking and clicking again to make sure that you've definitely selected or deselected what you wanted to have or didn't want to have selected. But in general, blue means you are going to act upon this thing. So if I just wanted to move this one squadron on its own, now I can give just that one squadron an order and it'll fly over there. If I want to move my ship, I click just the capacitor, and just my ship should move over there. In fact, these guys will follow me because at the moment they're just set to follow. But I could give them a separate order to go over there, and then back to my carrier like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, but some people sometimes struggle with this because they forgetting about to unset this blue cycle, so their carriers is drifting away.
Yeah.
While they controlling the fighters.
I don't know what to say. It's not a great like UX design on CCP's part, but it's what we've got. And if anyone knows a better way, I'm all ears. I'm not aware of one.
Is there a good guide or thing to set up shortcuts for fighters?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Also, may I point something out for you?
Go ahead.
Sometimes I see that if you in the carrier and try to check what is in your cargo, your carrier is marked with this blue cycle. So sometimes you may not even spot this.
Yeah, you've just got to look out for it. I mean, if it's any consolation, I do it all the time. Like, it's so easy to do. It's not great design, but it's the way the game works, unfortunately.
You can set up shortcuts on the shortcut menu for every tube. Also, if you don't have any fighter selected, you move your ship. So you don't need to select your ship.
That's right. Yeah. If you've got all your fighters in, then I think you just by default are moving your ship anyway. Cool. Looks like everybody started shooting each other already. That's cool. Carry on then, I guess.
You cannot receive cap transfers and triage now.
Oh, damn.
Question regarding hoarders in ship maintenance bay.
Yep.
How is the best practice to assess the cap charges in there?
Stacks of 50 is usually what's recommended. So you put like 400 or 500 in one hauler and stacks of 50. And that way you can launch one hauler out and nuke it, and hopefully at least one of those stacks drop.
So it is best to do so in a dread, because in a fax you won't be able to destroy it.
No, but in a fax you would launch it out and you would ask somebody else to shoot it.
Can we talk about a bit about combat refitting during combat?
Yeah. So you can't do it. You can't do it when you've got a weapons timer. You can do it once your weapons timer is gone, and your weapons timer most of the time only lasts a minute. So once you stop digressing things, you've got a minute to count down, and then you are able to refit. You refit by being adjacent to either a mobile depot once it's deployed, or a nester, which is a type of subcat battleship, or another capital that's in your fleet. That's the way to do it. And all you do is, you might have noticed me doing it just now. I switched out of the Lance. I'd finished this thing and fit a BFG so I could get in on this orgy of death and violence here. And all I did was I just opened up my fitting window like that.
Can I refit in
cargo like that? Go on, sir.
Can I refit in warp?
You can refit in warp if you are in the same warp tunnel as another capital. and you don't have an aggression timer. Yeah. So if you notice you're warping and there's another friendly cap in your fleet who's warping like literally together with you in the same tunnel, then yes, you can refit off of each other.
That's cool.
Boom.
And guys, if you want to, lots of people are getting doomsdayed here. If you want to like come and practice anything I've been talking about, I'm going to keep the Sino up. Like, just do a move me back to MTACO, build yourself another carrier. It's like basically free, or a dread, or whatever you want, and just jump back to this Sino. If the Sino dies, I'll try and light another one, and I'll be around for a little bit longer to keep answering more questions if you guys have any. But just feel free to practice.
So I know that super ratting is a no-go in Delve now. What about regular carrier ratting? What's guidance on that?
No one cares.
I mean, if you can do it.
If you die, it's such a small amount of ISK that like you're probably not gonna like be able to get saved if somebody tackles a ratting nid or something. Like they're super cheap. Just don't pimp them out or be an idiot with it. Darwin wards are usually like the way it goes. Like when it comes to it's 2020, nobody gives a shit if you lose a carrier. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
Just die silently.
Die with dignity.
Kind of amazed this Sino has lived, actually.
Everybody wave at the ISD.
What is that?
Can we blow him up? He's in a cockroach, I don't think so. Or at least he was.
Good luck. What is a cockroach and how do I get one?
You don't.
Work for CCP.
It's only for ISDs and CCP.
For those of us who have never been in a big cap brawl, do we ever come onto CC and divide up into like 2 teams and practice that?
Yeah, sometimes we do that. Because we haven't done a cap training in a while, and I don't think we've done like a sort of caps 101 type cap training in quite a long time. I wanted to sort of go back to the real basics. But yeah, maybe if we got some time next weekend,
we used to do that. Like we used to get together on CC and like get into 2 teams and just like brawl fantastic. But usually speaking, I don't like doing cap training ops when we have like war to do, and so this is like during the Jeff deployment, the cap training ops are like go lose carriers in combat. But obviously we sounded the horn in Gundor, and we have a bunch of people who barely know how to use the thing. So as the bad guys do less and less effectively, and we can slot these things in, like the Sunday time slot, they seem to do fuck all. So if we can pull it off, maybe next week we'll have a big old brawl. But war comes first, of course.
Yep.
Super helpful for those of us who've never been like big cap engagement before.
There's a big cap engagement going on right here at the moment. If you want to get in on that, I don't know who's on which side, but something's happening.
I'm trying more deathmatch than team deathmatch.
We're all on all the sides.
Parthas primary.
Apostle primary.
Mike Flood primary.
Tether back up real quick.
A quick question. I've heard people throw around the term like suicide dread. Is that another fit, or it's just because when you go see screen you kind of die anyway?
Yeah, tends
you
to be
plan
more
to
the
die
intention.
and hope to God that you do either die early or manage to somehow get out.
So there's a bit of a story behind that. We used to have like one set of like fleet dreads and one set of suicide dreads, and the suicide dreads were just cheaper. We kind of don't really do that anymore. So you might see some that are still referred to as suicide dreads. It doesn't really matter. Like as long as your dreads fit sensibly, there's the official fit, and then there's like small variations on that, and as long as you're not fitting something horrifically, it's probably fine.
What we're saying is nowadays all dreads are suicide dreads.
Yeah, pretty much.
I fucking love it.
So Titans, can I get 2 people trying to kill me? I will X up in fleet, and I want 2 Doomsdays hitting me so I can see how much my shit tanks.
I have a question about faxes.
Go.
I recently got a...
Go ahead, yeah.
I recently got a buffer fax, and that's my only fax. So which fleets can I join, basically? Because
This right here would be where you would use a buffer fax. In a giant capital brawl where Doomsdays are king, and this is where you would jump a buffer fax in.
We also
an
use them
active
on our
fax.
capital fleets.
Yeah, capital fleets too, but bigger than a battleship is generally where you want a buffer, because the damage being output by the other side